Good morning, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving, or the day after Thanksgiving. Happy Black Friday. We're very happy that you're spending it here with us today. I'm Julie Roginski here with Michelle Kinney and Jeff Jarvis, and we are here for our Friday Media Roundup. Jeff, there's so much to get to today, but welcome. How was your Thanksgiving?
Thank you. It was good. It was calm and quiet. How was yours?
It was also calm and quiet, which is the best you could ask for on Thanksgiving, I think.
And I hate parades. I despise parades. I just can't do it.
I hate parades so much that I live right next to the parade in New York, and I fled to another state to avoid that parade. So I'm very much with you. Listen, there's so much to get to. I want to first, before we get to anything else, talk about Trump's explosion yesterday at the yet another female reporter who asked him a legitimate question about the shooting in Washington, D.C. She specifically asked him after he was saying that this alleged shooter was not vetted. Michelle, why don't you play the clip and we'll talk about it actually.
Yep.
Good to see you. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
A question about this tragic shooting in Washington, D.C. U.S. officials say that the suspect worked very closely with the CIA in Afghanistan for years, that he was vetted, and the vetting came up clean.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other, and that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let them in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful. And if you look, you'll see there was a law passed. It makes it almost impossible not to let them in, not to certify them, so to speak, once they come in. And they came in, and they shouldn't have come in.
So I just want to say that everything he said is a lie, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Jeff, why is the rest of the White House press corps, or at least the ones who are not total Trump flunkies, not standing up for these women and saying we're not going to participate in any of this bullshit until you stop treating our colleagues like they're idiots or demeaning them or effectively objectifying them, which is what he does consistently to women? What's going on down there?
Well, let's put air quotes around press corps. I don't think it is anymore. And we watched Mamdani's adoption by Trump visit. Who was in the room then? It was, as far as we could tell, or at least only he called upon, it was only the right-wing nut jobs who kept trying, by the way, to stir up trouble that he wouldn't go for. And so the press corps has been invaded by these people, what there is of it. But even that aside, you're absolutely right, Julie, that the White House press corps has not stood up for themselves. They've never asked follow-up questions. They've asked the only questions they want to ask. They've never pushed on behalf of each other. They've never defended each other. It's 10 times worse when now he's going after specifically woman after woman after woman. They're not doing a damn thing. But similarly, when the AP was knocked out of the of the various events, not the White House as a whole, they didn't do anything. They should have walked out. In the first term, Jay Rosen and NYU and I were each out there saying that it's meaningless. You should send your interns. It's on C-SPAN anyway. It's recorded anyway. You get nothing out of this. And by treating it as if it is an important event, we only elevate it. Now, I guess I could be in trouble for saying that when it comes time to see the President of the United States, but still, we know what he's doing, and somebody should object in some way. Even a strongly worded letter. We don't get that. We get nothing.
And, there is a White House Press Association, right? And White House Correspondents' Dinner, they throw a very nice dinner I mean, it's a joke, but it's an all access dinner. But they do exist as an entity. And I remember very well back when I was at Fox, going back to the first Obama administration, I think, and Obama tried to effectively say Fox wasn't really a real news channel and didn't really want them around. And the White House press corps went nuts and rallied around Fox and said, if you're not going to allow them in, none of us are going to participate.
And to defend Fox of all places.
To defend Fox. But like, you know what? I'll even take it. Like, I'll take it if you want to, because kind of have a joint defense agreement where, you know, one for all for one, Article 5.
But you better apply that to everybody, not just the overcorrection of Fox News, right?
Why don't you like? I remember Jake Tapper went nuts about that.
Of course.
And what happened? Like, what has happened between then and now to allow this White House press corps, who are basically a bunch of access journalists, and I don't recall them ever breaking a story in their lives, to suddenly now say, it's okay that he's calling one of us Miss Piggy. It's okay that he's calling one of us ugly inside and out. It's okay that he's calling one of us stupid. Consistently, it's okay for the president of the United States to do this to us, and we will sit here like a bunch of little bitches and take it. I don't understand what's happening here.
It's access journalism come home to roost, right? I don't want to lose my access. I don't want to get kicked out. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want to get, probably these days, the bosses are mad at them because they could be frightened of criticism and suit by Trump. Every time he goes after ABC, for example, he calls them the worst network and so on and so forth. We know how ABC reacted. So, you know, it's ridiculous. And I don't know what to do about it except to ignore this so-called press corps. And that somebody has to pull out. Somebody has to say this is no longer worth it. This is no longer legitimate journalism. This is just propaganda. But they're not going to. And I know they're not going to.
No, they're not going to, because they want the access and they want, you know, they're afraid that he's going to kick them out. I mean, he does something very brilliant, as you pointed out, with the AP, which is he's very good at throwing the hostage on the tarmac.
Right.
Point. I mean, he's the king of throwing the hostage on the tarmac. And in this case, the hostage on the tarmac was the Associated Press. And I have a very good friend who is one of the White House correspondents for the AP. And that's it. They can't go into the Oval Office. They can't go in Air Force One. They basically have lost some of their access, and nobody else wants that. Nobody else wants that. We are very far away from the Helen Thomas's era, where you had, you know, somebody calling on a reporter who was feared for her questions at the White House, who was a female reporter, and nobody commented on her appearance. Nobody commented on her brains. And presidents from, you know, I think she was there from, I don't even know when, Kennedy on through her first Bush term. I don't remember, but was there for decades. And now you have literally, as you said, a transcription service. And I just, I'm embarrassed for them. I don't know what else to say.
What do you think about, do you think that there's also this notion that they think that this is all going to be over in 3 years? Because I honestly think that they think, okay, well, let's just get through this and then we can go back to being normal, serious. But they've set a precedent, right? I mean, they've set a precedent for, like, this is how the free press, or the lack of freeness press is going to be from now on, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. That is the bigger question. I was talking in our Thanksgiving dinner, trying to remember back to the first Trump term, and I can't remember who it was. It was more than one person who was trying to keep track of everything that was going off the rails, every norm that was broken, every rule that was broken, every change that was made that would have to be remade when Biden came in. Of course, that didn't happen. And there's just too many now. It's too much. Yeah. The idea of, I mean, this is one tiny example, and you know, the Times and the Post will call it norms, fine, but they're broken, and it's hard to imagine regaining the memory of what it was before. And I don't want to ever go back to the case to think that there was some idealized period before. The White House press corps has been BS for a long time, and really hasn't been, I don't think, necessary in a long time. But even so. If we went back to the somewhat bad old days before, it would be an improvement on today, and I don't think we'll remember that. Our cultural memory is gone.
Jeff, how do you think that the independent, you know, the resurgence of more independent voices, at least in this digital age, how are people to report on this White House and this administration and these moments that are happening in the Oval Office, if they're not in the room, and not just regurgitating, other reporters reporting? Is it the C-SPAN? They have to go to the actual raw files and go from that? Or like, how would you recommend, even, Julie and myself here, at Mayday, like trying to tell the story of what's happening here? What advice would you have?
Well, you just played a longer clip than I saw anywhere else. I didn't see the fullness of it, right? You just did that. That's an example, I think. You didn't need to be in the room to comment on and judge what happened. What we need is more judgment. The reporting is obvious. The transcript is already written, and Google can transcribe it into text for us, right? Yeah. And I'm doing this on a local here in New Jersey. I'm looking at taking videos of town meetings, and Google can transcribe them and put time codes in where the important things happen and organize it and open things up for people at a local level where we didn't ever have enough reporters to do that and could never give that level of detail. So I think we have to change our mindset at a large level about official events and transcription versus actual reporting. Do we have to cover the White House? Of course we have to cover the White House. Yes, I get that. I'm not going to argue that point. But the more journalistic resource we put out there talking to people in their real lives, the better. The more we talk about how, if you're going to cover Washington, covering the agencies and the regulations that are being taken away or screwed up or the corruption that's there, that's more important journalism. The number of people who are devoted to taking down the same event that we can all see and you just showed is a waste of resource.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not just the White House press corps. We talk about the New York Times all the time as pretty much the last bastion of quote unquote independent journalism that doesn't pretend to cower in front of power, but they're both sides-ism is insane. And there's a David Brooks column today that I don't know, Michelle, if you've had a chance to read. I have, Jeff, you certainly I know have. That kind of encapsulates all of this in one fell swoop. It's about patriotism and how Republicans love America irrespective of who's president, but Democrats don't. And it's part of the great awakening, as he calls, this period where in 2014 people said, you know what, maybe you shouldn't grab women, without permission, and maybe you shouldn't oppress people of color. And apparently that's called the great awakening. I just call it people acknowledging what should be an actual fact. But and he writes this whole column about how his love for America is unconditional, just irrespective of who is president. To me, that is such a normalization of what is happening right now.
Yeah.
Like it's one step from America Love It or Leave It.
Exactly.
Take America as it is, without criticism, without questioning, without doubt, without shame, or you're not American. That's where Brooks is getting worse and worse by the week. We talked about it last week.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second. I mean, like he's gotten that was shocking to me that he would write something like that.
And what I expect from Brooks is normally just banality.
Right.
But Julie, I'm glad you called on this. Yeah, because it reminds me of Goldwater republicanism.
In what way? That's interesting. Why do you say that?
Because it's that notion of it's a proof, and yes, he rejects much of what Republicans say, but he still says, but I'm with Republicans in being unquestioningly patriotic.
Right.
It's love it or leave it.
It's this whole virtue signaling of, I don't really like Donald Trump. I'm not one of those guys. I'm another Trumper. But I still love this country, even when Donald Trump completely destroys it. And to me, you actually don't love this country if you're not prepared to call out what this president has done to it.
Exactly.
Like, I love this country as only an immigrant can. And I can tell you that what he has done to this country is a complete destruction of everything it has stood for before. And I don't love this country as it is at the moment when this president is running this country into the ground.
The parallels to Israel and Netanyahu
are
obvious.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly right.
And it's not anti-American to criticize America. It's not anti-Semitic to criticize Netanyahu. It's not anti-American to criticize policies, nor anti-Israel's right to live to criticize its activities. I watch Germany a lot. I'm going there next week, and patriotism is a dirty word there for obvious reasons.
Right.
Even if a football team wins, waving the German flag is uncomfortable. And it's interesting and that's changing there. The AfD, the far right-wing party is pushing this kind of patriotism back, this kinds of blood and soil nationalism back. And that's what it is. Love or leave it is not far at all from blood and soil. You also, at that clip you played, the other thing that struck me was Trump talking about these people. Right, which is usually a reference in race. In this case, in America, it's black people. You people, right? But in this case, it's Afghanis and it's foreigners. Period.
Right. But he lumps them all. Afghanis. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not just Afghanis. It is all the other countries that he's put a travel ban on.
Exactly.
And all of them have one thing in common. They're they're comprised of people who are not white in the way that Donald Trump considers people to be white.
Well, he's clearing the path for the white oppressed South Africans, though, Julie. So it's all.
You won't. I mean, listen. This is a president who will not invite South Africa to the G20.
Right.
Effectively, because it is no longer an apartheid state.
Well, and shouldn't the rest of the G20 be screaming about that? Shouldn't they be maybe not coming, not honoring Trump's G20 meeting?
I'm going to say this: the G20, the G8, the White House press corps, they all have everything in common, which is, they're so desperate to normalize and not break norms that they're breaking norms. It's the exact same parallel exactly to what we talked about.
The White House press corps, it's
like, my friends, it's over. Like,
lack of courage.
At what point do you acknowledge that it's over? What maybe something better will arise from all of this. I certainly hope so, and I will work to make that happen. But whatever it is will not resemble anything that happened prior to 2015. Like, that period of American history is over. It's like these antebellum, fantasies Conspiracy had after they were beaten. Like, you could rebuild a better South. It's just not going to resemble what the South was before the Civil War. That's kind of what this is with Trump.
I want to record this, Julie, and play it again if and when we get back and the pendulum swings to Democratic power, because I fear we don't want to follow the Republican example of thinking that Reagan's years were just so wonderful we have to go back to them. Yeah. And I think you're right that we have to beware saying that there's some Biden-Obama world to return to. Too much else has changed. Yeah. We need an entirely new world. We don't want to return to the world run by Chuck Schumer. We need new leadership, new generations, and a new vision for where we should go here.
Well, and I have to say that I think that Joe Biden's big problem was that he tried, because he was a creature of the old world, not just because of his age, but because of how he came up politically, that he thought Trump was an aberration and that we could go back to pre-2015. And he was a former guy. He wouldn't talk about it. He didn't want to prosecute anybody, like the day those. No. I think
calling him the former guy was honestly one of the most dangerous things. I remember in the moment being like, do not call him the former guy. He's not going anywhere. He's still here. I mean, he had a rally within weeks of January 6th, and he was out there. And again, just being covered like everything was fine. And because this wasn't taken serious as a serious threat, here we are sitting here in November of 2025 discussing Donald Trump again. And I wanted to bring it back just really quick to the AfD and the Germany part of this too, is because, generationally, I think about Elon Musk, right? And going to talk, and he was talking to people in Germany, I think it was the AfD party or something. And he said, you don't need to be ashamed of your grandparents. You don't need to be ashamed of where you came from. Basically signaling to people in Germany, there is a shame of the history in Germany and the people who did what they did, and you don't need to feel that shame anymore. But just return to your roots, and everything will be fine. There's nothing to be afraid of, because there is a faction of this country and people like Elon Musk that want to go back to that. And again, I think that that's a huge piece of the puzzle that's not being reported on either. And again, Julie and I were talking about this earlier today, is the journalist, I think, impulse to chase every story singularly, instead of stringing all of this together in a big picture way that says, hey, this is what we're looking at here, and these little things all fit together. And I sit here and I'm just like, I'm so angry at every cable news station and newspaper and publication and that I have to read and sit here and watch these people chase these stories. And it's like, what can we do? And I guess that's maybe my question for you, Jeff. Maybe there is, I don't know if there is anything for us to do, but it's like, how do we do this as individuals, react to this and hold these people accountable other than just canceling our subscriptions,
I think we need positive examples otherwise. Within the Times, Jamel Bouie, to me, is a shining light.
Totally.
And what makes him so great is that he calls on history. It's what you were saying, Michelle, there is that we cover these stories individually as if we can tell the entire story from beginning to end, alpha to omega, in this piece of type, and it's over, and then the next time it's entirely new except for a background paragraph. And that's not what we should be doing. We should be looking at these longer trends, not only in the present tense, but also in the past. I just called up I'm doing research for a next book, I hope, on the death of mass media, as I mentioned. And I was reading Edward Shills, who was a wonderful sociologist out of the University of Chicago. And he did work after World War I interviewing Nazi soldiers and trying to understand their group cohesion. And he wrote in an essay here about having interviewed Nazi sympathizers in Chicago in 1941. And he said that he saw, it's eerie, and I won't read the whole thing, but he said they tended to, let me see for a second here. In my interviews with these zealots and in my reading of their correspondence publications, I was impressed by their passion for solidarity, their insistence on absolute loyalty of their members to the organization, and their paranoid anxiety about the backsliding propensities of their fellow members. And he goes through characterizations of them, talking about how it is a dualistic conception of the world in which light fought against darkness, good against evil, Protestants against everyone else, Christians against everyone else, Americans, the same as Christians, against everyone else against Jews and foreigners, in an unceasing war for the destiny of the world, an unbreakable solidarity, and so on. And he talks about the Dearborn Independent, which was Henry Ford's horrible publication, and he talks about the Elders of Zion. You take this one long paragraph and you substitute Trump and MAGA for Nazi sympathies today, although I would argue that they're in many ways synonymous. You substitute Dearborn Independent with Fox News et al. Yeah. You substitute Elders of Zion with QAnon, and it is exactly current. It is eerily current to what we see in this country today. And our journalists do not recognize history. And I have to claim guilt here as well. I had years of not reading these kinds of academic papers and these kinds of historical references. I saw that it was about breaking news. It was about current news. It was all present tense. We proudly say that we write the first draft of history, but that means we ignore history. We think that if it's not new, it's not news. Yeah. And the fact that so much of this is not new is exactly the story. So how do we do that? I think we have to provide examples by going back and, like Jamel Bouie, pointing to the fact that the Civil War has not ended in this country, that there have been, as Rachel Maddow has done in her podcast, showing that there have been Nazi sympathizers in this country before, and they are still among us. Yeah. And we've got to give perspective and context in a way that journalists just simply are not built to do, and their publications aren't built to do.
It's you're right. It's absolutely right. And then you have other publications like CBS, potentially soon CNN, if this acquisition goes through, where Barry Weiss, who is motivated, I think, by one thing and one thing only, and that is her undying support for Israel. And God bless, I'm happy for her that that's her position. But now she is platforming people based on their allegiance to her point of view. And I'll use one example. She thinks that a good debate that should be had on news is a debate between Alan Dershowitz, who is disgraced as part of the Epstein files. I have no idea what happened there, but this is a man who worked to get Jeffrey Epstein off and allowed him to continue to prey on young girls at the least. We don't know what else is in there.
Right.
But is a staunch supporter of Israel. And he had a debate over gun rights with Dana Loesch, who's a former spokeswoman for the NRA.
What kind of debate is that?
Right.
Anyway.
That's
And Dana Loesch also is a very strong supporter of Netanyahu's behavior in Gaza. And those are the kinds of people she wants to platform. She doesn't say it's because they are people whose views who share her views on Israel, but the reality is that's who she's platforming. And I don't want to get into this is not about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I don't even want to say that her views are right or wrong. It's not about that. It's about the fact that she has a point of view, and she is platforming people who are otherwise pretty awful people. I mean, the stuff that Dana Loesch, I knew Dana Loesch back in my Fox days, the stuff that Dana Loesch advocates leads to mass death. Yeah. The stuff that Alan Dershowitz has done has allowed girls to continue to be raped by a pedophile. And yet, because they agree with Barry Weiss on foreign policy, those are the kinds of people that CBS should be platforming. I mean, if you're a real journalist at CBS, if you are somebody who works at 60 Minutes, I cannot even begin to imagine what people like Tanya Simon, who now heads up 60 Minutes, and her producers, and the people who are actually on air at 60 Minutes, from Leslie Stahl on down, what those people actually think when they think that that is the kind of journalism that should be at CBS.
Yeah. And so Barry Weiss said all this at a Jewish event. And she, I'm not going to have Tucker Carlson on because he's awful. But Dershowitz and Loesch are okay.
Because he's anti-Netanyahu. That's why.
Exactly. And but beyond that, what struck me in this video interview where she said this is the utter banality of everything else she says. Yeah. It is just ideological tapioca and cliches and idiocies. And this is who's in charge of CBS News. CBS News doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered for years. Okay, fine. We write it off. It's gone. It's the Capodimonte network now. But CNN is still an important factor. And for all the complaints we could make about it today, and there are complaints, it's frightening to think how it's going to just become organized by Barry Weiss in this banal scheme where she tries to make it all look like it's okay, like it has some ideology beyond the one, you're right, Julie, that she has. And she just hides everything behind that.
And it's interesting because now she wants to, steal Scott Jennings from CNN and put him on CBS. And why? Because Scott Jennings, for a couple of years, wore to every show a yellow hostage pin. And I respect that, actually. I don't respect much about Scott Jennings, but I respect the fact that he was wearing this pin on behalf of the Israeli hostages, right? But that's a signal that she picked up on that. That was a signal to her.
Yeah.
He went, I actually happened to have been in Israel by sheer coincidence at the same time that Scott Jennings was there. And my husband ran into him at the Western Wall because I was on the women's side and he was on the men's side. But, he was there for whatever, Israel thing he was doing. All of that, I don't think he knew that Barry Weiss was going to take over CBS, but all of that was a signal to her that Scott Jennings is somebody who is pro-Israel, and therefore we need to platform him. Again, this is not about Israel. I actually am pro-Israel. I'm not pro-Netanyahu, but I'm very pro-Israel, right? That's not why somebody should be platformed somewhere, right? Because you're putting aside everything else that they've done and said, which are complete and utter lies and a disgrace to journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Only because of that. Yeah. And to have a debate on that topic, fine. Make it a debate. Make it on that topic.
Make it a debate.
Right. And don't make Israel the thing that infuses everything else, because then you can't see what's up and what's down.
That's not right. That's not what we're here to do if we're running a media network, which is effectively what she's doing now. And I would say to you, CBS does have a role to play, CBS News, in that they have 60 Minutes. They still have that franchise.
Yes, true.
And when she eventually gets to it, and I assume she will eventually get to it, I think that probably will be the last thing she touches at CBS, but it'll happen in the next year.
Yeah.
What do you do if you are somebody who has dedicated your life to 60 Minutes, as most of the people who work there have? I mean, you think about the new executive producer of 60 Minutes, that is Bob Simon's daughter. She has grown up around that franchise. She lives and breathes that franchise. You think of all the people, you have Scott Pelley and Leslie Stahl and all those people who are there for the most part now. They are, you can like them or dislike them, but they are real journalists in that they've dedicated their life to CBS News. And to see what is happening there now, where you're platforming people like Alan Dershowitz and Dana Loesch, I mean, that's insane.
So the mini Fox News Sinclair is is likely to take over yet more stations at Scripps, I believe. And I have sympathy for some young journalist who gets out of J school and gets to be an on-air person and thinks they're famous in Brigadoon, and they're paid next to nothing, and in comes some horrible company. And you know what? I'm not going to blame them for not quitting when the atrocities start. I'm going to try to warn them that they've got to worry about their own sense of themselves and their professional ethics. But I get it. You're poor because we pay crap in this. But if you're on 60 Minutes, you're well-to-do. You have a reputation. You have, I would say it so crassly today, a brand. And you're going to have one chance to either use that and cash it in on journalistic virtue or lose all of its value when Barry Weiss cashes it in for her agendas. And so I'm going to hold those people to a high standard. And when things start going south of 60 Minutes, if they don't speak up, then I said shiver for them. Journalistically, they're dead to me.
Yeah.
I agree. And I want to talk a little bit about the thing that everybody's talking about now, which is the Ryan Lisa, Olivia Newsy contretemps. I don't know how else to describe it. But Ryan, did you read his most recent newsletter?
I'm curious to ask first, Michelle, you're with your parents. They're not in New York media world, right?
No, but they certainly watch everything and read everything.
So you didn't have to explain it over Thanksgiving dinner the way I think many media people around the country had to do.
Yeah. They knew who Olivia Newsy was. I had to explain who Ryan Lizza was, and they were like, when we talked about the second installment of his series, I think there was like oh my god, I can't believe this. But this third installment, and and he talks about this, that he's like, listen, there's a lot of salacious stuff here, there's a lot of like sexual whatever, but it is actually important in context so that you see the bigger picture here, which I agree. After reading that third part, I was like, oh wait, okay. And and we can get into the details here of what he talks about, but if Vanity Fair and Condé Nast, after this, continue to employ this woman, they have lost all credibility, all of it. All of it's gone. And I say that as I have been a subscriber of Vanity Fair in our household for over a decade. And I mean, I guess I'm just one person, but I'm like, I won't ever read this ever again unless they do something about this immediately, because it's beyond anything that I think any of us could have imagined how bad it was.
Let's talk about what she did so people understand. Yeah. So Olivia Newsy, I don't want to put the sex part of this aside because it's actually not relevant. I think that is right. People started reading this for the sexual salacious part of this. That's not what this is about. So he says, and I assume he's got recordings of this because I assume he would not be printing this if he didn't have evidence of all of this.
I would hope not. Yeah.
And I think I think he said he made her kind of come clean and throughout their breakup. And I don't think she understood that he was recording her surreptitiously as she was telling him this stuff, which, by the way, Brian Lisa, talk about a dish well served cold. I mean, but anyway, he alleges that when she was having this emotional affair with RFK Jr. or whatever their relationship was, effectively went from being a reporter who was covering him to being a political operative, where she was the recipient of leaks from his campaign that she would then go back and tell him about and catch and kill those stories, but also sell those people out who were giving her information, that she was trying to get close to other reporters who were working on stories that were potentially helpful or damaging to RFK Jr. so she could shape them. And then the most salacious part of this is that she had the same woman that did a a sketch of her, I guess, that's going to be running in the Vanity Fair Hollywood
Well,
issue.
if I may, I believe it was the same woman who did the courtroom sketches of
Yes.
Trump.
Yes.
Trump liked her, ergo, she then got this woman to go to Mar-a-Lago. Go ahead.
From Mar-a-Lago to do a sketch of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to go along with Trump to basically work him to appoint RFK Jr. to be this to have RFK Jr. endorse Trump, I guess, in exchange for what is happening now, which is that he's Secretary of Health,
Which is killing people.
Which is killing people.
Yeah.
Trump apparently said no, Olivia Newsy could not come during the sketch. So what she did was she put a recorder into this woman's bag, and this woman, I don't know if this woman was aware that there's a recorder in her bag. I assume she probably was because somebody had to press the play button. But this woman picked up on conversations that were taking place between Trump and people close to him.
Yeah, because he was taking meetings like during the sketching and everything. Yeah.
And basically, Ryan Lisa implies that the Butler shooting might have been a setup.
Let me see. Is this the this is
at the very end.
At the very end, according to Olivia, when Izzy left the session.
Izzy was the sketch artist.
Is the sketch artist. Izzy was hung up on something she believed Trump might have said about Butler, Pennsylvania, something explosive that, if she were correct, would shatter our understanding of recent history. Now, that's a cliffhanger, obviously, because he wants us all to subscribe and read the next installment, which I'm sure is coming shortly. But that is something else. Like, what?
I have a couple questions about this for you, Jeff. One is, of course, we'll get to Olivia in a second. But by the way, Ryan Lisa has been sitting on information about what happened
right
for all of this time, for over a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's been waiting to monetize it.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Exactly. And Americans don't trust journalists, including the New York Times and the Washington Post, who hold the good stuff for their books.
Maggie Haberman being guilty of this, and even Bob Woodward. I mean,
exactly.
At
important moments in history. And this is salacious, and we don't know what it is. It could be nothing. It could be some small revelation. But the presumption, the conspiracy theories out there are that somehow or another, even with two people dead, Butler was a stage show, a setup, whatever. The conspiracies are out there, and to play into that is irresponsible. To sit on that is irresponsible. To also sit on what he knew about her reporting, to not have called New York Magazine, to not have reported publicly what was going on with RFK and Trump as it was going on, and he wasn't happy with her then.
Which she was writing about Joe Biden, for how everybody feels about Joe Biden and his age and everything else. Like, okay, fine. But she was the one writing this story about him being this, like, an invalid, and how, apparently, he couldn't identify some mega donor. And she just kind of made it up. It said that, how'd you get proof of that, whatever. And I believe the line was, I just Michael Wolfed it.
Yeah, the sourcing, right. And right. I think it's important, too, that Nuzzi was doing really the worst hatchet job on Biden.
Yes.
And New York Magazine has had some soul searching, but they need to do more soul searching as well. But let's go back to Vanity Fair. I interrupted you, Julie, as you were telling the final part of the story of Isabel Izzy Brewerman, is that Vanity Fair then hired her to do an illustration of Olivia Nuzzi in the book outlet of a conceptual nude of her.
Oh my God.
So you add all this up. So Vanity Fair, I think they've got to know what they're doing here. They're playing into the sex of the story, obviously. They're thinking this is cute. This is the Republic. And Vanity Fair should be absolutely ashamed. I used to work at Condé Nast. I like a lot of people there. I think that they've done good work. We talked last week about what they did with Teen Vogue and firing people from who dared to complain about that. And now this. And Roger Lynch is the CEO of Vanity Fair, and he's not family, and he's running it like any old company out there. And we're seeing bricks come out of that wall, and I think it's a shame. But we've got to note it. This is Vanity Fair is just shameless right now. And when we had the story came out after Liz's first. Oh, she slept with Sanford, said he. Mm-hmm. Then Vanity Fair was reviewing. So as my wife said, so one was okay, but two's not. Where was Vanity Fair's line?
Right.
that it was
Right.
okay before. So they need to express where this line is in this review.
I mean, listen, say what you will about Ronan Farrow, right? But he wrote a whole book about catch and kill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
The Black Cube and I remember, all the.
and you have, it's ironic because it's such a small incestuous world, but you have New Yorker hiring him to do a story, to do all these stories about Weinstein and all the stuff that NBC apparently refused to do because they were so in bed, or some of their executives were so in bed, no pun intended, with Harvey Weinstein. Not in the literal sense, which I know I have to clarify because it's Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
So, you have David Remnick, who has this, moral kind of compass allegedly about this stuff. And he hires Ronan Farrow to actually write the stories that NBC wouldn't write about Weinstein. At the same time that he's firing Ryan Leza for allegedly a Me Too transgression. Right. Ryan Leza then goes to Politico. And Politico, he becomes a big deal at Politico. And he then is effectively sidelined at Politico after Olivia Nuzzi and he have this very explosive breakup. And she makes allegations about him, which turns out probably, well, I don't know, accurate or not, seems like they countersued each other and she dropped the lawsuit. So then Ryan Leza says, okay, he does what all of us do, which is regular media sucks. I'm going to start my own thing and I'm going to do it on Substack, as a lot of us have, and I'm going to make a go of this. I get it. By the way, respect it, get it, respect the hustle. We all need to make a living. This is how he makes a living. But there are so many questions here about how he was sitting on this stuff while at Politico.
Yeah.
And did not publish it, where Politico exists specifically for this kind of stuff. But he decided not to give the owners of Politico, the German owners of Politico, the money. He decided to hold on to it until he started his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
While Condé Nast is doing exactly the same thing and monetizing this shit show while pretending that they are a actual media outlet. And forget Vanity Fair, they own the New Yorker.
Yeah.
Right? Like the place that will publish stories that others catch and kill.
Yeah.
Where's David Remnick weighing in on all of this? Because he's got a big voice of the New Yorker.
Yeah.
And they own one of the largest newspaper chains in America.
Exactly right.
And they have a big ownership stake in Warner Brothers Discovery. And again, I worked for the Newhouses and liked the Newhouses, respected the Newhouses, learned from them for a decade. And that's why I think it's a shame to see what's happening there, because out of a company that was, it's just fluff, they were doing some real journalism. They saved the New Yorker. They did important things, and it's a shame to see what's happening there now. But it's not just Condé Nast. Condé Nast is in our eyesight right now. Yeah. But my view this week is all this was piling up, and New York Magazine too, and Politico too, and all. Just burn it all down. Right, and it's my shtick because I'm working on a book about it. But I'm killing mass media. I'm declaring it dead. But good riddance. You guys are the ones trying to replace it, and this is what we replace it with: is honesty and completeness and perspective.
But yes, but I kind of think about this, and where this was a pit in my stomach, and this is very specific to me, to what I do less and less now, but what I used to do for 30 years, which is I was a political operative and I would leak stuff to reporters and I would expect that to stay off the record. And there's an understanding that you have the way you do it is you have an agenda that you want to get out there publicly, and they have an agenda, which is they want to break stories, and it's a completely transactional relationship. And the transaction is, if it's off the record, nobody knows who did it.
Right.
And to think that there are reporters who are sleeping with the people that you're leaking about, and that they have an agenda that you don't know about, is damaging to the whole structure of how this is all done. I mean, there is a whole ecosystem of how stories get written.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if Deep Throat was leaking to Woodward and Bernstein, and Woodward or Bernstein was having some, torrid affair with, Pat Nixon. I'm making this up.
I mean, can you imagine? Oh my God.
Right? But I mean, my point is, like,
it's compromised.
You're compromised. You have to trust that the reporter to whom you're speaking, their only agenda is journalism and not something else.
Right.
And I don't know, after this story, which I assume Ryan Leza again has tapes, or else she would have sued him for, she would have sued him long ago for defamation.
God knows that discovery.
Right. Well, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is, like, clearly he's not making this up out of wholesale talk.
Right.
how does Conde, I mean, if I'm Anna Wintour, if I'm any of these people, I know it's Thanksgiving. I know they're buying themselves some time. It's a short week. It's, it's Black Friday. Nobody
Yeah,
cares.
but like people are, I would say do it now before
Do it
anything because
now.
people are home scrolling on their phones and not paying attention to their jobs or anything else like that. I think you're going to get more attention now. Right. I think you'd get more attention now. And it's, again, like to what we were saying, Vanity Fair has done great reporting. They have told great stories. But I think back, like I interviewed Tara Setmayer and I interviewed Vicki Ward a couple months ago at Seneca Project, talking to her about the Jeffrey Epstein story that she had to write in the beginning of the 2006 or something like that. And how she had the Farmer Sisters story early on about Jeffrey Epstein, and Graydon Carter told her she couldn't do it because he was threatening her. Now, listen, if she'd gone ahead or they'd gone ahead and published this, would anyone have believed it? Would anything have changed? Who knows? We'll never know. But she could, or not she, but the Condé Nast and Vanity Fair could have made the decision to publish that story. It could have changed the course of history. It really could have. And I think about those things all the time, just like small acts of courage, in moments like that, because now, here we are with this, how many women, young girls have been hurt since then. And what is happening to our country and our world because of all of that. It's how do you trust these people? How do you ever trust them again? Well,
journalists constantly talk about regaining trust. That has a big presumption that they ever had it.
Yeah.
And they didn't, and as you're talking, I have this vision of dominoes falling. This entire discussion, if you start with the White House press corps, you move to magazine journalism, you move to and by institution here, I mean the lowercase I of practices and institutions, the institution of journalistic trust and sourcing, the institution of the entire structure of political operatives and PR that feed them and how that operates, the institution of the campaign. All these dominoes have fallen. All these institutions that we used to have some sense of their structure, it's over. It's gone. It's all been broken. And we have to rebuild from the ashes. It's what you said before, too. It's not as if we can just easily go back. We can easily erase the last few years. The lack of trust in Vanity Fair right now, and thus in all of Condé Nast, and also, frankly, in magazines, add in New York Magazine here, is, and the fact that the business is dying anyway, I wrote a little book about that, means that I think the magazine dies. I was trying to buy a copy of The New Yorker in New Jersey because they had a special issue. I don't subscribe. I could not find it anywhere.
Really?
In New York, in the center of the universe, go try to find a newsstand. You can't.
Yeah.
Go to a train station, and magazines are just an aside beside the souvenirs now.
Yeah.
The business is dying, and rather than trying to save the essence of the institution and reinvigorate it in a new form, the institution's dying with it.
It's really abhorrent. I mean, I have been so bothered by all, like, start to finish, everybody in the story comes out looking awful. There's not one.
Oh yeah. There's no heroes.
Lisa, for sitting on this for so long and for allowing this man to become the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And now we are literally having people die.
Yeah.
Yes.
Newsy for existing at this point for what she did, and for advancing this man who will cause, has already caused and will cause mass death, and doing it in a way that was so underhanded and awful. The New Yorker, who I think in some ways I feel most sympathy for, because how would they have known? And they got rid of her, I think, quickly. Condé Nast for picking her up after all this, and then having her have a sketch. I mean, this is the craziest part. They made her an editor. If you're a reporter that she's editing and you have to know who your sources are, what are you going to do? I mean, you're putting Condé is putting their own reporters
at risk.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm a reporter and I'm edited by Olivia Newsy and I say, hey, Michelle Kinney's my source on the story, but it's off the record, but I have to tell you because you're my editor.
Yeah. And then she runs off and tells whomever else. I mean, right.
Sleep. God, I mean, listen, she could sleep with whoever she wants, but do it on her time.
Right.
And do a nude portrait of her playing into that. Yeah. And Mark Guiducci, the new global editorial director of Vanity Fair, does the Hollywood issue with only men.
Right.
In this time of all times.
And
what
then
kind of judgment does that show?
But having a semi-nude picture of her, why?
Yeah. And then the New York Times on the other side of this doing the fluff profile, Jacob Epstein writing that, and then having this like cinematic where she's like in the car, the hair blowing, and I'm like, what on earth is going on? It's just, and it's just another example of how nothing matters apparently anymore. I mean, we're talking about, and Julie and I were talking about on the morning show today about the Afghanis and the interpreters and how, us putting their safety and lives in danger after they've come here. And it's, how could they trust the American government or or military intelligence, any of this ever again? But I think like the same applies here. It's like all of the institutions that America has stood for so long have just been sort of like torched, and they're rotting from the inside out. And people like Olivia Nuzzi and the people who employ her and are excusing this behavior, it's like, how do you move forward and have any credibility or any seriousness? And it's like the movie Idiocracy has come into play here in real life every day in all facets of our lives. It's depressing.
Well, you go to what Julie brought up at the beginning of the show. You follow David Brooks' example.
Yeah.
And you blind yourself to everything. Right. And say, I'm a proud American. I'm a proud journalist. Everything's fine. And we're never going to fix things if that's the way it is.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then, this will live.
But I'm delighted that we have the Washington Post new editorial board. I want to mention this. Because in the midst of all of this, the Washington Post new editorial board pays attention to what matters in life. And this week they had an editorial, not a frequent use, to decry one important issue in America today, which is the lack of paper towels in public restrooms.
Yep.
And don't release the Epstein files. That was the other one that they wrote, was the editorial board, right? They said, we don't need to do this. And it's like, we can't endorse for the presidency. Can't do that. But we can
endorse pedophiles.
We can endorse pedophiles and paper towels.
I mean, but this is like laughable, but this at one point was the home of, as we talked about, Woodward and Bernstein and Ben Bradley and
Marty Barron. Marty Barron was a great editor.
Marty Barron, all the stories that they broke under Marty Barron's stewardship. And now it's become a joke.
It's a joke.
Yeah,
it is. To advance Jeff Bezos's interest. And I'm sure that paper towel editorial came out of whichever one of the two Brits is in charge of the Washington Post right now, going into an American bathroom and saying, oh my God, there's not enough paper towels here. What's going on?
And you want to talk air about blowers. I hate them.
Yeah.
Right. They're so noisy and they make
agreed, but no need to write an editorial about it.
But also though, on the other side of this, right, the Jeff Bezos and his wife, what's her name? Lauren Sanchez.
Yeah.
So they have taken over with Anna Wintour, right? And they're doing like the Met Gala. They're going to be in charge of the Met Gala with her coming up next May. I mean, this is the incestuous, just on top of this is with a rot, right? It's from within with Condé Nast and the Met Gala and Anna Wintour and Jeff Bezos. And it's like, there is oh, well, we care, but we don't really care because it's the Met Gala. And
Anna Wintour, let's not get her off the hook. Anna Wintour is whatever she is. She's basically second in command, if not first in command, of Condé Nast at the point.
And with platforming the Trumps around the inauguration, what's Ivanka wearing? And it's just normalizing all of that.
Where is she in this whole newsy thing?
Right. Mm-hmm. And some sympathy to Anna Wintour because she doesn't matter anymore. She doesn't set fashion. Fashion is set on Instagram. Fashion is set by the public.
That is true.
And so there's kind of a desperation here.
Yeah, and, survival. She wants to survive.
And go back to the current management of the Washington Post, Will Lewis. Will Lewis was trained by Murdoch and the Telegraph. And just mention parenthetically that we cover American media here. The Telegraph, which has just fallen into disrepair
Yeah.
and become a joke on its own sort, is now going to be bought by the Daily Mail in the UK. So you have a consolidation there. And the Brits are kind of saying, well, even Alan Rusbridger, who I think is the best editor alive, was saying, well, it saves the Telegraph. I'm not sure the Telegraph should be saved.
Yeah,
because
I
it's
mean,
going to
saving
be-
it at what cost?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Into what
And
form does it survive? You know?
Yeah.
So
Right. And you know,
it's not just here.
I have a question about 60 Minutes too, just to bring it back to the 60 Minutes part of this too, and the things that we, you know, can we trust, can we not trust? Is 60 Minutes Australia? I feel like every time I turn on YouTube and I see a 60 Minutes Australia piece, they're doing legit journalism and storytelling with Virginia Giuffre, with the I remember going to them to watch the segment on the whistleblower at Meta who wrote the book. They're doing really great stuff, but I'm assuming like they're under a different set of.
There's no connection.
There's no connection. Okay, because I'm always just like, what?
Yeah.
Is
Say
what's
the other
going
thing
on?
that's confusing about Australia, besides the toilets going the wrong way, is do they? I never know they actually do.
I don't know. And the Rupert, I mean, the home of Rupert Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Sky News was controlled by Murdoch, and then it's no longer controlled by Murdoch. It's now controlled by Comcast. But in Australia, it's still Murdoch.
Oh,
And
really?
it's worse than Fox.
Oh yeah.
So if you
Guys.
see a Sky News brand come along, and you've got to see whether it's Australia or not, because you've got to know which one it is.
Okay.
Very
Yeah. See, I
confusing.
didn't know that. Yeah. Good to know.
Well, Jeff, are you off to Germany this week?
Yeah, for a quick media summit in Austria.
Okay.
Fun.
Oh, Austria. Sorry. Okay. We're going to try to snag you next Friday anyway, from wherever you might be, if we can. We can work it out. If not, hopefully we'll see you the week after. But this is, I love the show because we get to vent
do
about
I.
all the stuff that we have questions about, and you get to answer them. So thank you. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, hopefully we will build a much better brand that breaks news as it happens and not wait for it to be monetized on
Right.
in our books.
Right. I mean,
Look, if I were the New York Times or any of these other outlets, I would actually tell my reporters, you cannot write books. Like you just can't do it. Because people, like I subscribe to the New York Times. I'm paying money to have news broken in the Times. I don't need to buy somebody else's book 3 years later to read something that happened. Like I should be reading about it in real time.
yeah. Yeah.
So, AG, pay attention to that, please.
Well, I know you're wrapping up, but let me just go back to Liza for one more second. How cruddy is it that obviously that's like a pollster biasing the question going in? How cruddy is it that he did the first one free and the next under paywall?
Oh, I mean,
It's a cocaine. Give you the taste first, right? It's a good drug. You know.
And every journalist I know who's whining about copyright and how dare you steal my story and my soul and AI is awful. They're passing around the PDF everywhere. Nobody's paying for it. Everybody's pissed.
Oh, they're not the only ones.
Yeah.
yeah. Truth.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, nobody wants to actually be registered to pay for this, but nevertheless, it is.
Yeah. I fell on the sword for that one. Yeah.
You did.
I did.
Okay.
I was like,
Will you-
otherwise we're not going to rate it. So
Will you email me number 4, please?
Sure, I will. You'll be the
Okay, thank
first
you.
one.
Okay. All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll have more Lisa Nosy updates next week by the time we see you. Or maybe not. I don't know. Okay. Have a very safe trip to Austria. Enjoy. And we will see everybody else here tomorrow for Coffee and Conversation. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.